And so that was the first time I've ever heard that. And I thought, I was like, oh yeah, like outside, inside, outside. They'll start off outside, swerve to the inside, then take it back outside. And that makes your line less of a turn and less of a lean.
Yep.
And so that's like, I've been thinking about that a lot this year. Like whenever I ride with a corner or downhill, I think outside, inside, outside.
You know what's funny is that same video had the same impact on me too. Because we had watched it. I think you had even sent that to me. And I remember that little clip and I was like, that's gold.
All right, welcome back to Bespoke Endurance. Today is episode 17 of Recreational Rider to Racer podcast series, where Josh and I are transforming into racers, leveling up on the bike and in life in the midst of having busy lives, work, and young families. If that interests you at all, hit that subscribe button and follow us along for our journey. You will not be disappointed.
Not at all.
Not at all. All right.
Full refund if you are.
We are coming off the heels of...
Biggest race of the year for you.
I know. I was going to say, is epic the right word? Or is that too much?
No.
Okay.
Epic is a great word.
Okay.
Because this felt like a Grand Tour stage race.
Yes.
If you took a Grand Tour and you had one of these individual stages, the race that we did in Cherohala, that felt like it.
I think the profile of the course would match a Grand Tour.
Yeah.
So if you missed our pre-Cherohala chat on the last episode, you might want to go watch that first.
We'll link it.
Because we basically broke down what we think was going to happen, but now we actually went and raced it, and now we get to talk about it.
Yeah.
I had a blast.
I did too. It did not disappoint. It was a crazy amount of climbing. But let's maybe take this section by section.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of different aspects of this race, and I think it would be really good to talk through each section together because both of us were with each other for the most part for a good chunk of this race.
Yeah. That was fun too, kind of in the beginning working together to get to the mountain.
Yep.
The climb, like the climb.
The climb.
Okay. So hang on. Let's put this. We'll do a very quick summary and then kind of get into each section. So, race starts off. First 40 miles is flat to rollers. Yeah. At best. First 40 miles is a pack of 300 in the peloton. Yeah. And then you hit it. After that, you hit the tail of the dragon. So 2 climbs. I think all the motorcyclists say it's like 300 turns or something crazy.
It's a lot of turns.
But it's 2 big effort climbs, descending, very technical descending. Then you hit what was it, like 12-mile false flat? Yeah. Where you're just kind of climbing. And then you hit the climb.
The climb.
And unmistakable, you are climbing. The Skyway is it was like a 5 to 6% average gradient over basically 13 miles. Yep. You hit the top. You immediately go into descending. Kind of. We'll get into that.
Sort of.
And then you finish right at mile 113, back where you started for a grand total of 113 miles with 10,000 feet of climbing.
Yeah. Strava had me at over 11.
Same. So I don't know how that works, their algorithm, but I'll take it. I'll take 11.
Thanks, Strava.
The shirt, which we should have worn, we should have worn our shirts tonight.
No, I washed my clothes. They all stunk. I put them in that wash so quickly from my bin. All right. So let's talk through the night before because this was fun. We went down with our buddy Mike and we all drove down together. And when we drove Friday, we ended up getting there early afternoon, and Friday night, man, most scenic ride ever. We did an hour, and we did just straight by the river. Yeah. Beautiful. I didn't want that ride to end.
Freshly paved road.
Yes.
Super smooth, just right by this flowing river. Yeah. And then the way, like a 1% the whole way. Then the way back is like -1, so you're flying with an easy.
I mean, make no mistake. So the tail of the dragon is a very famous area of the country where a lot of motorcyclists, a lot of cars that will race this particular section. And it's crazy because even on that Friday, we saw a group of Porsches, we saw a group of Corvettes. They were flying by us and didn't feel 100% safe on those when they did that. But the amount of motorcyclists we saw just doing this, it was incredible. I mean, this is every single day. As I've come to understand this, I've got a colleague who races bikes and motorcycles, I should say, and cars, and he's done this a lot of times, and he was saying this is a very famous course, essentially, to do.
I have a friend last year I told that I did this, and he rides motorcycles, and he was like, "You did the Tail of the Dragon?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, I've done that."
Yes.
Dozens of times on his motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's I guess it's like a mecca for motorcyclists.
Yeah. Which is crazy. I mean, I didn't know that going into it, and I would learn that about a week before we did our race, and then I was like, "Oh, okay." And then you saw it that Friday. You're like, "Oh, I get it." Like there is literally people doing this all day, every day. So
okay, so let's do this. Let's break this down. So the first part is a 40-mile flat to roller. We take off. We get 2 motor cars that were with us. One kind of leading the peloton, one going up and stopping cars at all intersections. So we never hit a stop sign or a stoplight. We just blew through everything. Which was awesome.
How did the peloton feel for you?
Way better than last year. So last year, I think I said this in the episode last week, it was really like squirrely. Now this year, that might have been because I was more towards the
back.
Last year, the back. This year, the front.
Right.
Where it wasn't as squirrely. Like it was a lot. I mean, there were some moments. There were some people where you're like, okay, what are you doing? But compared to last year, where I was like at the very back, kind of working my way up, this was significantly more calm, especially in the last 10 miles of that first section. Once we got to mile 30, it really mellowed. Like people were kind of comfortable with their position. Like where they were in the peloton. What did you think? Because this had to have been for you the most cyclists that you've
in a group
at one time.
In a group at the one time, I think it was really good. It was surprisingly a lot easier than I thought for those first 40. Just in the aspect, I when we talked about this, you're like, look, you're cruising at 23, 24 miles an hour. But when you're in that group, you really don't feel it that much because you're just drafting. You're just straight drafting. Now, we did have one guy that we knew who was up at the front taking turns. I'm not exactly sure why he was up there the whole time, but I was basically just on I was on our buddy Mike's wheel because I just knew he was like, your whole strategy with this is to kind of just gradually move forward. Don't have to go right to the front. You shouldn't be at the front. But because there's always guys that for whatever reason they just want to take turns and they want to be at the front and do that. So our whole strategy I felt like was perfect, where we just kind of gradually kept moving up a little bit, just not aggressively. It was just very casual. But honestly, I didn't feel like I wasted any energy going into that first 40, which is great.
I was super watching you. It reminded me of when we went down to Georgia and you got second in the crit. I was very impressed. Like you have this ability to lock onto a wheel and not give up that wheel.
Mike was my man.
But
like get off my man.
I still get skittish isn't the right word. I'm just not good at I ride.
I think you're too Midwest polite.
I think I'm too defensive like driving. Like I'm not an aggressive driver, and so
I'm an aggressive driver.
If there's a wheel, I'm not just gonna zoom in there and take it, which I know is what you're supposed to do. But I'm like, I don't want to cause.
You're just asking people. You're like, do you mind if I take this real quick? Or does this bother you?
If I would lose a wheel like a little bit, someone comes in and takes it.
Yeah.
Whereas you never gave up. You were glued to Mike's wheel, and so much is happening around you, and you were just hyper focused. Like it was super impressive. Like you were just. Whereas I'm kind of yo-yoing in the peloton a little bit, you were just locked in.
Yeah. I pushed a couple people over. It was fine. No, I didn't. I didn't do that. But no, it was fine. I think there's just something about, I don't know, maybe just the mentality of being like, Mike, he's done extremely well. He did this ride 2 years ago, and then he just kind of had this strategy. I knew, given the fact that he weighs only 135 pounds, that like he's gonna crush this race.
Yeah,
and he's gonna do very well. I knew you would do very well as well, but I also thought Mike's got kind of the first 40 mile strategy down to where he's just gonna gradually keep moving up. And I was like, I like this. I'm just gonna stick on his wheel. So that's what we did. And it was perfect. But
I was surprised that there were a few times where I had to kind of put a little effort in to get back up, but I was surprised at how minimal the effort felt.
Yeah,
it was like we were I'm not putting in a tempo or a threshold. It was just like you just kind of carry momentum 40 feet past where you are. Like it was very easy to move up once there was an opening, or I would just pop to the side, kind of move up, and then drift in.
Yep.
Okay, so that gets us through the first 40. Then we hit the tail of the dragon. So if you looked at an elevation map of this course, it's basically like flat, and then these two kind of like the map, the elevation looks like the tail of a dragon. So it's these two kind of humps before you get to like the wall.
Yeah.
So the tail, let's see, highlights of the tail.
We had damp was probably the right word for roads. We had some damp roads on the tail of the dragon. Why are you shaking your head?
I'd say damp going in. When we got up there, wet.
Well,
like they were wet. Yeah. They were not damp when we got up there. At the bottom, sure, they're a little damp. But when we got up there, I was like, these are puddles. We are not like
we're getting fixed on a word.
Like it was not damp up there. It was wet roads. You can call it whatever you want, but it's not damp.
So we're gonna move past that word real quick. So wet descents. How did you feel with this? So the climbs. Let me ask you this. So the two climbs. How did you feel?
Two climbs, I think the tail really kind of highlighted our strengths and weaknesses for each other.
Yep.
So like we'd get on the climb and I'd kind of tempo up, and then I'd kind of look over my shoulder and you would kind of drift back a little bit.
Yeah. I was just hanging on your guys' wheel.
And then we'd go over the top and start to go down, and we hit the first turn. I'm like, okay. And then we go down again, and you would just go past me.
Yep.
And you got considerably far ahead of me on the descents to where when we got to the second climb, I knew I was closing on you. Like I was climbing faster.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as like, let's say a raw segment on the course.
Yeah, you did.
But I kept thinking, I have to get up to him at the top if I'm going to catch him quickly. And I didn't. And then you were gone when we went down the back half of the tail.
I think in part because I felt really good going into those. The climbs felt better than I anticipated in terms of just holding power. The goal was to stick to your wheel. And then when you were going down the descents, I felt really good. And I was like, this is too slow of a descent for me. Not in a necessarily a bad way. I just felt like I was like, hey, I feel good, but I'm going to take these faster. Yeah. And I wasn't necessarily trying to make like a...
So you didn't feel risky?
No, really. I really didn't. I felt that for these damp roads that on the descents we
it literally says in our notes wet descents. It does not say damp.
But I felt like on the second, like coming down after the second up the second hill of the tail of the dragon, I felt really good and really strong, and I was like, ooh, good, now I can just put a little bit of effort into this descent and feel really good, knowing that like full well that yes, you were going to catch me, because we had that false flat, and it's like I knew even from a strategy standpoint, I'm like, I'm not going to try and like, our goal was to break at mile 61, was it 61, 62, where we had that kind of rest stop before we hit the big Skyway bridge. So ultimately I knew that like whatever happens, I'm still going to be like, even if I was ahead of you, I would have still waited for you to be like, hey, we're going to do this together. Yeah. And that I still would have had that strategy, because I was like, at the end of the day, I still wanted to try and stick on your wheel up the Skyway as much as possible. But we did feel like at the end of the tail of the dragon, there was a couple of people who came down fast, and then it was that false flat, and eventually it was like I knew you were behind me, and I was like, I'm just going to wait up for you, and then we kind of worked together. Yeah, so.
I saw you kind of sit up, and I kind of caught up, but because I kind of knew like it's in neither of our best interests to do the false flat alone. And like as soon as we caught each other, as soon as I caught you, we started catching the people in front of us.
Correct.
Like I could see that gap closing.
We were doing like 1 minute
efforts.
intervals.
Yeah.
And they didn't feel like a lot. They were very like, they were good, but they weren't like, oh, I'm like putting a lot of work into this effort.
Before the big climb.
Correct, yeah.
Right. Then we hit, so we talked a lot about fueling and kind of the plan.
Yeah.
And so the plan on paper was 2 stops at mile 60 and at the top of the Skyway, which is like mile 83.
Yeah.
And so we got to mile 60, hit the stop.
Yep.
4 minutes, like.
Well, let me say 2 things really quick.
Yeah.
One is your powder went all over me
Okay.
during this stop. So
Okay,
let me give my perspective of what happened. Here I am. We've got 3 bottles. So we were rocking, since this was like a roughly 6 hour. Our goal was time wise to try and hit 6-ish hours, a little under for the total race. So we had planned it to where we would do 2 bottles on the cage and then 1 bottle in our jersey.
Yep.
So that's what we did, both of us. And then we both had Ziplocs, and we basically put like our...
That looked like cocaine.
They didn't. Yeah. Outside of the cycling event, probably a little suspect in terms of what this bag is. But essentially, we had these 3 bags. Mine were perfectly... I filled them perfectly in my bottles. And then all of a sudden, I'm filling my last bottle. And then all of a sudden, I just get this giant, like, poof. Here comes Greg's just nutrition all over me. And I was like, what in the world? You're like, sorry, man. It's like, how did you miss your bottle and hit me?
In my defense.
That much.
So we...
your thoughts, Greg?
Yeah, I can absolutely justify this. So we got off our bikes, and you put your bike on like the bike rack.
Yeah.
And take our bottles over, and we're filling up. And some idiot on his bike just rolls right up to the giant Gatorade tub of water, like on his bike, and like cuts the whole line. Clearly there's people like there before him trying to like in an orderly way get as quickly as possible their bottles filled. And he just comes zooming right up on his bike, gets his bottle, goes, excuse me, and just leans forward. Totally just throws me off of everything I'm doing, and I just kind of like I just start pouring out.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was perfect. I wanted to be extra sticky for the rest of the race, so it was perfect.
Well, then we left each other.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because we wasted energy in this section of the race that I could have used during the Skyway. So here's what happened from my view. You said, hey, Josh, do you need to use the restroom?
Yes.
And because there's Porta-Johns at mile with this first rest stop. And I was like, initially I said, no, I think I'm good.
And you said no. And I said, well, I got to go. Yeah. So I ran into the porta potty.
Correct. And I changed my mind during this time. And I said...
Which you never said.
No, I didn't tell you.
So I came out, and you're gone. Like, I'm looking around. I'm like, he is gone.
My bike was still there, Greg.
I didn't see it. Yeah, so I grab my bike and just run and jump on it and go. And I can kind of see 3 people up the road. I'm like, I think that's him. So I'm like putting in an effort to try to catch up to you in front of me. To which 10 minutes later, I look back, and you're behind me. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, 10 minutes. You didn't even look back once. I'm yelling at you. So here's what happened. I was like, okay, you know what? I probably should just go to the restroom really quick here. I was in the Porta-John next to you, and then I didn't pee very long. And
you never said, I'm going to go pee next.
Correct. So here's what happened. I get out of the Porta-John. Greg's taking off on the bike, and I was like, wow, okay, that's how it is. So here's what I did. I raced to my bike, jumped on it, and I was yelling, Greg, because I knew in your mind, I was like, he thinks I left him. And I was like, this son of a gun, he thinks I left him. I was like, I'm not that type of person. First of all, I'm not going to go into the Skyway trying to take a dig into your time. I
didn't think you were either, but then this is what went through my mind. Yeah. When you descended so well in the tail, I was like, maybe he's thinking he just needs to get ahead for the Skyway. So like, I was like, maybe he's just going.
Well, yeah, it was pretty funny, because then when I was trying to catch you, you were I don't know, maybe you were ahead of me for within sight, but then it was like you were far enough ahead. I was like, I gotta put some work in, otherwise Greg's gonna he's gonna keep thinking this whole race I'm just ahead of him.
But the whole time I'm putting work in to catch you.
Exactly. So there was this one girl who she was pretty quickly. came up and I was like, hey, do you want to work to catch up to him? And she was, I think, taken off by that, like taken off guard. And she was like, yeah, sure, that's fine, And then I was like, okay, let's take like minute intervals and we'll just catch him. And then, so I put a minute interval in, and she comes and takes a little turn, and I was like, this isn't going to help us catch him. I was like, it was just funny because I was like, I think I chose the wrong person. So I was like, oh, you know what? We're making this turn. I'm just going to keep going, So I kind of felt like, I felt bad, but at the same time, I was like, I don't think she really wanted to work with me anyways. So we parted ways, and eventually I caught you.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, okay, I spent some energy catching you, going into the Skyway, which had been the toughest part of the race. So it was perfect. Yeah. Yep. That's what happened.
Same. So, but then it mellowed out, and we got to the Skyway. And so the Skyway is like 6%. I forgot
12.94 miles of a climb.
I forgot that there's a couple breaks in it, where there's a couple flats and descents where it kind of breaks it up.
Yeah.
Which,
not many though.
If I were to do that, like after I did the race, looking at that, I was like, oh man, I could have totally mentally broke this up. Like, oh, now I only have like, I'm a third of the way up or 2/3 up. But nonetheless, so we start off, and I think we both knew that I was going to pace the Skyway.
Yes, 100%.
And I think,
I'm not pacing that.
And I think the plan was, I'm going to pace it, and you're going to ride my wheel as long as you wanted or were able to.
Yeah.
I was going to go at the tempo that I felt comfortable with.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking, hey,
I'm going to drop Josh.
I'm going to drop Josh, and I wasn't thinking I'm going to carry him a certain distance either.
Correct.
It was like, I'm going to go my speed.
You do your thing.
I'm going to do my thing, and if you get a little bit of draft, then awesome for you. Like, and so...
well, and just a side note, for those listening too, one of the things that's been very apparent over the last, honestly, well, really ever since we started really at this, so maybe close to about 6 months, but what's been really apparent in a really cool way is like, you are a really good and strong climber and a good racer. Like, I mean, it is becoming evident that like, and when we did these other races so far this year, where it's like, dang, Greg can put some time into some of these climbs where I have not been able to tap into that yet. But it also just like credit to you that like you've become a really good racer very quickly. And I think it's also one of those things that I've realized, especially going into this really big climb, biggest climb I've ever done in my life, knowing that I'm like, I've got to try and hang on as much as humanly possible, knowing that full well that like at the end of the day, like you could drop me at any point during any of these climbs, on any given day. So, but just wanted to tell you that like it's been fun to watch you, like, because I didn't know that going into when we first started racing. And I was like, dang, like Greg's good, like he's really good. So it's impressive to watch you.
Dang, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. How did you feel in the Skyway?
When I looked at my power compared to last year, it was lower, but it was more consistent. So last year I went in too hot, and the second half just was miserable, just struggling.
Yeah.
So I felt really smooth the whole way.
Yep.
If I stood up, I would still stand up just to change body positions, but not like I saw a couple people and they were grinding the pedals. And so I just felt super smooth going up it. I was super impressed. Like, I mean, you hung on my wheel for like a
20-ish minutes,
like around a quarter, a quarter of the Skyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah, equated to like 3-4 miles. I don't remember what it was.
My favorite part of it was we're going up it, and I remember thinking, man, I'm really glad like I've done a lot of riding on Zwift up the Alp, because we've talked about that a lot, and that's like the perfect for me. It was the perfect.
You're a big erg mode guy, aren't you?
No. But like pacing the Alp, pacing a long sustained climb like that, because I knew that this climb's a little bit longer, but
yes.
So there was a moment when we're going up it, and I literally was like, I'm thinking, I bet Josh is like, feeling really like prepped for this, because he did it too. So I was like, hey, aren't you glad? Like I shout back, like, aren't you glad we did the Alp? And you were just like, no. I was like, I think he's hurting at this moment.
I was hurting, Greg. You know what? Your friend was suffering in silence, and I wanted you to read the room because I didn't want to talk during that climb. There was no like, you're feeling great. You're like, hey, let's chat about like, how are you doing this week? What's your week been like? And like, no, I'm killing myself. Mile after mile trying to get up this mountain, and you're just trying to have a conversation about like training. I'm like, that's the big difference right now between us climbing where, So was I ultimately glad I did the Alp? Not necessarily. No, I don't think it necessarily helped me. But I also, I think for this race, it was the biggest, what I really took away as one of the positives for me, was I performed a lot better than I expected, honestly. Part of it was going in, we had a kind of a race, like a really, like the fastest group ride Tuesday before we left on Friday, that same week where I was overheated, like this was like a 6 p.m. race or kind of like group ride.
It was like 85 degrees that night.
It was so hot.
Hotter than anything we've done this year.
I underfilled 100%. I just felt horrible because it was just one of those where you just like, I was just like, man, I fatigued so quickly during that ride, and I was like, this is terrible. Going into this where I'm like, this sucks, and I wasn't in a great headspace Wednesday and Thursday going into this race for this weekend. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen during this race. But what I will say is during that Skyway, the biggest challenge of the race was trying to keep that mental positivity. So keeping that mantra, our coach gave me a mantra to keep just telling myself, keep reminding myself. But when I was able to hang with your wheel for at least 20 so minutes, I was like, man, this is great. Like I'm actually doing better than I thought. And even though it was brutal for me, it was also one of those, I was proud of that because I kept pushing. I just kept being like, all right, no, you're losing time. Catch back up to the wheel. Just catch back up. I had these little minutes or these little like, you would start kind of drifting away a little bit, and then I'd be like, no, keep on his wheel, keep at his wheel. Like it hurts, but we got to keep doing this. So eventually you did pop off, but you didn't. It wasn't like you were trying to drop me. I just was like, I feel like I cannot keep this pace for the full almost 13 miles of this climb. So I was like, I'm going to just keep at my own pace right now. Whatever happens, which is great. But it was one of those mental things I took away as a positive, being like, okay, I'm not the worst climber in the world. Like that gave me a mental boost to be like going into any other thing moving forward, to be like, okay, that was one of the hardest climbs I'll probably ever do in my life, the longest. But at the end of the day, I was proud of myself for not giving up, because there was moments during that climb where I was like, I just want this climb to end. Hour and 20 minutes.
Were you catching people? Did you catch anyone on the climb?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Isn't it's weird though?
We passed a lot of people on the first couple.
Yeah.
So yes, but that was us together. Me by myself, no.
It's weird when you can see people.
Yeah.
And they're so far up the road, and you're just the same distance for.
Correct. Yeah.
It just feels like forever.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing.
Yeah.
No, when I saw you kind of drop back a little, I wasn't like, okay, time to send it. I just wanted to maintain the tempo I had.
Yeah.
I don't think I started really trying to, in my mind, attack like until the last mile or two.
Yeah.
And there was a guy behind me, and I felt like he was getting closer. And there was a guy in front of me that I was gaining. And so I kind of was just like, okay, catch him. Don't let him catch me. Mm-hmm. And so that very over the top.
Yep.
We got to the top, and I was good on my waters. So I just rolled through the aid station at the top, and I just went after the descent.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I had a funny moment where I thought the aid station was at mile 81. Turns out it's 83. And I was like, where is this aid station at? And then, because I was craving water. Like anybody who's raced long races, you know that when you put these in your bottles, and I knew this. I had this during my Ironman. I knew this feeling. I just didn't expect it to happen during the Cherohala race. But man, I tell you what, I just craved water so much that I was like, I'm going to take a minute or two and just get a bottle of water. Like that just would feel so, so good. So in that moment, I ended up stopping for a minute. But it was so cool because I got a push off. It was my first, I don't know if I'll ever get one again, but it felt like the tour, you're just like, this is so cool. And so there was a guy who's like, hey, I'll give you a push off. And I was like, absolutely, I'll take this push off. So got it, like filled up a bottle of water, and then he pushed me off, and I was like, and then you're off to the descent, sort of, for that first part going down the Skyway. So it was
first part was a little tricky because it was so foggy or cloudy.
Yeah.
Like you're in the clouds.
Yeah.
And like the temperature the climate in general drastically shifts over the course of that race, where in the Dragon it's wet. You get to the top, you can't see 30, 40 yards. And then as you go down, you can see and it warms up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think the one thing during this whole race was the amount of climbs, these hidden climbs. I felt like the whole course was just gaslighting me, because it was just this idea of like, hey, just one more hill, buddy. Just one more little hill. And then I get to it and be like, hey, just kidding. Just one more hill, buddy.
And one was like 10%. It was like a 10% for like a half mile.
It was like, okay, so I knew going down the Skyway, this is already at like, okay, this is going to be mile 88 and 93. There's 2 little climbs again. And I mentally knew that. And I was like, after 93, this is all downhill. As I was promised via the profile of this race, turns out there's still more climbs. There's still like 4 or 5 little hidden climbs in there, and I was just like, I had an existential moment of being like, why am I doing this? Why am I on this bike? I paid for this type of suffering. So yeah, but
I had
how
a
did you feel
moment-
on the descent though? I felt really strong on the descents, and then these hills were just
I can
killer.
relate. I remember going down, and I remember saying out loud, I don't remember there being this many climbs in the downhill last year.
Yeah.
And it was
Would it
funny.
have been helpful to tell your friend that? Like, just so you know, there's probably like 5 additional climbs when you think
Even
you're
Mike
done climbing.
at the bottom was like, I don't remember that many climbs on the descent 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
I guess they added some in.
Yeah.
No, I felt really good on that descent, on that section of the descent. So roads were dry.
Yep.
Fog the clouds kind of lifted, and I just attacked with. That's kind of, once I got over the top, it was like I'm trying to empty the tank now. So emptied them in the climbs, emptied them in the descent, and then
So you went full send on like those 15 different climbs
I full
that were
sent
after
it,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
I think I hit my top speed was like 48.8 on one of them.
Dang.
So
well, let me ask you this, because we talked about this before the race. Descending is something that you were very conservative with before this race. In last year's race with this, because these are true descents. For those that don't know, like, we live in an area where like the descents are typically like 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds if you get a really long hill. But these descents, they go on for miles. They are truly like, you're like, wow, this is awesome. I can just keep going at like 38 miles an hour and feel great. And you just are cruising down these descents. So it was really fun, but it seems like you were a lot more aggressive the second half of the race than the first half. Because Tail of the Dragon, I would still say you were conservative. Yeah. In terms of your descending.
It was more windy and wet. I wasn't trusting the turns or the wet roads.
Yeah. Wet, damp, it's what I felt.
But no, these descents, they're kind of more open. I had my map pulled up on my head unit so I could kind of see when it was a sharp turn versus a small bank turn. Once I can kind of see out of it, I can kind of keep attacking into it. There were still that I braked probably more than I needed to, because I'm still a cautious descender. Like, I'm not a daredevil. So, but I feel like I had more confidence. I remember, I think it was this weekend we were talking. One thing I've noticed just about the bike, the SL7, is like on my old aluminum bike, if you get 25 miles per hour, you're like, oh, this feels like I'm going fast. Like I'm going fast.
Right.
There was a moment where we're in the Peloton, and the Peloton was going down, and I'm surrounded by people, and I'm going 35, and it didn't feel like I was going 35 miles per hour.
The bike felt like you're in total control.
Yes, it feels stable, and so that carries into the descent, where when I hit 48, I never had wheel wobble. I never felt like, oh, I'm in over my head, I need to slam my brakes, or I'm gonna fly off. Like, I felt very stable and comfortable, because that's the thing. I'm not gonna full send it if I don't feel
comfortable.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think this year you did so much better than last year?
Last year, it was a lot windier at the top, crosswinds.
Okay.
So I could feel my front wheel wobbling more. But I also think that I've been on these wheels that I'm on now. So this is your bike, but
Right.
I've got
Get the Rovals.
Yeah, I've got the Roval Rapides, and I've gotten used to them handling really well. And so I think I've just had more practice in crosswinds and I've been trying to corner and descend better this year, like working on that. And so I just felt just more confidence going down it. Where, I mean, I think what I was really proud of is from the bottom of the Skyway to the end of the Skyway, I only got passed by 2 people.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So, and the 2 people that passed me, I passed them going up the mountain, probably like 45, 50 minutes in.
Yeah.
And they just together caught me on the descent. But those were the only 2 people that passed me.
That actually pass you.
Like all day. So whereas last year, I'm getting passed in the Skyway, I'm getting passed on the descents,
Right.
I'm trying to hang on. So that was where I felt much more just stronger. It was like nobody's I'm like, I went down the thing and I'm thinking, I'm not going to let anybody catch me.
Right. Yep. I love it. Well, it leads into our main discussion. But before we get into that, let's give a shout out to our sponsors.
Yeah. So we want to give a huge shout out to Road ID for not only supporting our podcast, but also letting us film right here at their headquarters. If you're a cyclist, runner, or just someone who wants peace of mind while out on the road, Road ID has you covered. Their medical IDs provide crucial info in case of an emergency, and they look great too. Do yourself a favor, check out roadid.com and grab one today. Big thanks to the team at Road ID for their support. We also want to mention that Kentucky Open Road Racing Series is partnering with us to bring you an exclusive deal. If you're looking to race in the Kentucky Open Road Racing Series this season, use the code Bespoke15 at checkout for 15% off your registration. Plus, every race entry or volunteer spot enters you in a drawing to win a Cannondale Super 6 Evo 4. Whether you're a seasoned racer or just getting started, Coors has something for every level cyclist. Head over to KentuckyORRS.com and use the code Bespoke15 at checkout. That's BESPOKE15.
Our main discussion. Let's kick this off with how to descend with confidence and speed in races.
Okay.
I think descending is one of those free speed skills that for us, since we're recreational riders we're transforming into racers already, but it's like the idea of, I think this is one of those aspects of racing that up to this point have not put really any thought into, or much thought into the descending tactics and how this can really be beneficial in a key race like this. Because this has been something to where this was a key part of the race for us, where it actually mattered a lot. Where, that skill and being that confidence really helped you not only perform extremely better this year, but also gave me a lot of confidence knowing that any other race moving forward, I can cruise and down to sense and feel very much in control. And I don't think I had that confidence going into that beforehand. So I feel like this was a huge win in that category for me. But let me ask you this. Why do you think it's important to be a good descender if you're a racer?
I mean, a lot of the time, I think that's where if you can't descend, you're losing energy. So people are using no energy to get away, and then you're burning energy to try to catch back up.
Yeah.
When I look at
like people attacking on the downhills,
or just being not even attacking, just being more confident and not slamming their brakes going into a turn, and just knowing how to get through the turn safely or the corner. Whereas you get in, you're a little skittish, hit the brakes, lose that speed, then you're powering to catch up.
Yeah. I
mean, when I look at last year's performance overall compared to this year, so the overall time was 21 minutes faster. Mm-hmm. The ride time was 14 minutes faster. But most of that time was in the descending. Yeah. Because I didn't go through the tail as quick. I didn't descend the tail as quick.
Right.
I PR'd up the Skyway by 3 or 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. So that's still like 10 minutes of just descending better. Yeah. Of just descending better and more confident.
Well, I think one thing that I think about now too, and this is something to where you see these videos of like Tom Pidcock and others where you're just like, oh my gosh, like how could you, their descending skills are just otherworldly. And you think about these in the pro levels and you're like, oh man, that would be so cool to be able to descend like that. But the thing that really has never crossed my mind is like, actually, this is something to where if you get confident and you feel good and you can develop these descending skills, it's like you can actually make some time up if you're not a strong climber like me, where you're like, oh, actually, like if in a given race, when you look at the profile, like, okay, like I might lose a little bit of time on the climb, but man, if I can make up a little bit of this in the descents for others that just maybe aren't as efficient or not as confident, that could be a tactic that I could use to my advantage in future races. So I think it's one of those things that made me think about it during this race that I was like, oh, I like this. I want to improve mine for sure. It's just, I had a lot of confidence coming out of this race, knowing that like, okay, descending does not bother me at all. Like I don't feel skittish. I don't feel out of control. The bike handles are amazing. But what do you think would be what do you think was the biggest, the easiest mistake you would make so far with descending up until Cherohala?
Yeah, mine.
Whether just recreational riding or just even racing up to this point.
My biggest thing is I don't look where I want to go. I look at where I am. And typically what people have told me is your bike goes where your eyes are. So people, like our coach has really been teaching me to look ahead where you want to go and your bike will follow your eyes. Whereas if you're looking down, you're going to get wigged out. You're going to hit the brakes more. You're going to slow down. And so instead just looking ahead 30, 40 yards out of the turn versus looking in the turn. So that's been a huge weakness of mine that I've been trying to work on. And then this is going to be silly, but that GCN video where they were doing the Zwift Academy. And they had Vanderpool on that racetrack. And he just said 3 words that I was like, that's it. He just said outside, inside, outside. He was like the most basic thing that, and I know people are going to listen and be like, well, duh, but I'm like, no one's ever told me that. And so that was the first time I've ever heard that. And I thought, I was like, oh yeah, like outside, inside, outside. They'll start off outside, swerve to the inside, then take it back outside. And that makes your line less of a turn and less of a lean. And so that's like, I've been thinking about that a lot this year. Like whenever I ride with a corner or downhill, I think outside, inside, outside.
You know what's funny is that same video had the same impact on me too. Because we'd watched it. I think you had even sent that to me. And I remembered that little clip and I was like, that's gold. Because it's just so simple. Outside, inside, outside. And it even helped me before whenever I watched it before some of these crits and just be like, it's the same with cornering. It's like outside, inside, outside. Same tactics. It's just like you don't have to descend to use that to your advantage, because I would tell you that even in these crits in the 4 or 5 category, there's a lot of guys who take the corners well, and then the other guys are just like, what are you doing? Like, and it's just that simple. Like, I don't think they've even had that strategy before. So I think it's really important. And I thought about that too. I feel like my biggest mistake I was probably making up to this point was simply just braking too much. You know, heavy on the, like when you just don't feel that confident on your, when you're descending, when you're kind of figuring it out and you're like, oh man, this is kind of like a steep descent here. Typically I'd always be braking way too heavily. And then now I think it's just that it's so funny how it works where you get into these races or you get into these things and you're just like, boom, got it. Confident. I should be fine. Like, you know, I'm not going to go extreme. I'm not going to do anything like a, you know, like you're saying, like a daredevil where you're like, dude, you're out of control. But in that same vein, you're like, but now any descent that we have down here, it's like, yeah, man, this is easy. Like this is simple. I can take this with speed and feel really well in control.
Well, one thing too is coming down that mountain was racing, but also practicing. Because there's so many turns and the descent is so long. It's like, okay, I didn't handle that turn like I wanted.
Correct.
Here's the next one.
Oh,
that one was a little bit better.
Exactly.
Whereas like around here, you descend down a hill and then you're just at the bottom.
That's it.
It's like a 2-minute descent. You're like, well, I guess I got to climb back up it to descend it. And it's like, I'm not doing that. So,
well, I think it's interesting because it poses the question of like, what do you think would help improve descending? So if somebody was new to racing, or if they're even just like us, where you're just like, hey, even if you ride recreationally and you're just like, man, I'd like to be a better descender. Like, what do you think are the things that so far for you have stuck out to where you're like, man, if this is what I wish I would have known, even, you know, at the beginning of the year type of thing.
So I don't want to.
We're not experts at descending.
Right. No. I don't want to say a statement that's like 4 hacks for descending.
No,
so I'll just
right.
say from my experience, what has helped me was the outside, inside, outside.
Yep.
And every corner and every descent I attack, that's what is going through my mind, and picturing that line as I'm going in and coming out.
So that line choice.
Yeah. And even today I went down a descent, and even I was like, I got this one. And then I still was like, dang it, I didn't have it. Like,
okay.
So like, it's still a work in progress for sure. But that, I think, has been what's been most helpful me this year.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would say that it's the same with that. So line choice for sure. I think probably 2 quick things. One is not braking. Like, you can brake a little bit before the descent, but then releasing those brakes, especially when you're like before the corner, when you're releasing it into the corner, and you're just like, you're not worried about braking and be like, I'm out of control. It's like, let the bike do its thing.
Yeah.
Like, let the tires, they're grippy, the right tire pressure, all these things make sense and help you. I would say that. So just braking technique where you're just like, just trust your bike. All right. The other thing that I think was interesting for me was like your body positioning. So we've seen this guy, Zach Morris. I've watched a couple of the videos where he was like he might still be a coach for EF, but at least at one point was. And he's had a lot of videos on just keeping your body in the right position when you're cornering. And so I just kept thinking about that, given the amount of times that you actually get to practice it in a race like Cherohala, where you have so many different corners. You're like, hey, I get another chance to practice another good descent here. So it's for those that are not not watching on YouTube, but it's like if you're doing a right-hand turn, you're popping your right leg out a little bit. So it's obviously up. So you don't want your right leg straight. You don't want it down, but popping it up, but then keeping your body weight centered, kind of keeping that like, you're counterweighting, so you're popping that leg on the side that you're turning, but then you're counterweighting it. And so he showed a video of like Tom Pidcock doing it and he showed himself doing it. And I was like, I remember thinking, I want to practice. I want to do this at Cherohala. Like and I just felt like you had so many at bats to be able to do that. And I was like, this is cool. But that just even of itself, I was like, ooh, this is really good. Like this is really helpful for that. So yeah.
One thing, I remember our coach, he went down for like a training weekend there one year.
Yeah.
And he was like, when you do 2 or 3 days of just climbing and descending those mountains, you just come home feeling so confident because you're so well practiced.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the old baptism by fire? Just that old expression.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things to where if you're in an area like us where you don't get a lot of opportunities to practice really crazy long descents, it might be a good opportunity to find a race or find something to where you can go out and do something like that, or try and carve out some time during the year if you feel like that's a skill you wanted to improve. I would definitely say that's something that's worth doing just to improve your descending. But all right, we would love to hear from you guys. So what is the scariest or most epic descent you've ever done? Or if you have a descending tip or trick that has really changed your racing, we would love to hear that in the comments below.
I'm going to add on to that.
Okay.
With descending, fastest speed.
Oh.
And you have to prove it with a Strava segment.
Okay.
So wherever you hit that, have a link to your ride where it shows that you hit that speed.
I like that. Okay. Yeah, let's hear what you guys got. We'd love that. Also, any tips or tricks, open to hearing them as well.
Yep. Okay, let's move. Before we wrap up, let's move into this week in cycling. This is the Dauphiné. It's been kind of 2 things that stuck out. 1, fun to watch the race, and 2, this is kind of where we're seeing all the new bikes and bike tech stuff come out. New wheels, new frames.
It's like the Tour de France sneak preview.
Yes, and I can't remember the last time that we've had like the 3 favorites in the Dauphiné all racing each other.
Yeah.
It's been I can't remember. It's always like 1 or 2 GC guys, but not the entire podium of last year's tour is in this race.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
I mean, what's been so as we've recorded this now, this will only have been stage 4 has been completed at this point.
By the time this airs, this thing's over.
That's true. Who won, by the way? You're in the future. But I think what's really fun, what has stuck out to you the most so far in these first 4 stages?
For me, the most exciting thing was stage 1.
Yeah.
Where I think everybody thought it's going to be a sprinter's day.
Yeah.
And then another, like, of all people to attack, Jonas.
Yeah.
Who was like not attacking on a, 18% climb, but like just a little kind of, he just pops off the front. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, haven't seen that really before. Like, and then Tadej goes, then Remco, and then Van der Poel. And I'm like, holy cow, the 4 best cyclists in the world right now just blew up the peloton. And it was awesome. Like,
it felt like one of those, like, is this scripted? Is this like a Friday Night Lights? Like, are we being joked here? But the finish was incredible because it's like, is this peloton going to catch these guys? Are these sprinters going to finally catch these guys? And to the very end, they almost did. They were so close.
And it was fun to see Jonas, like, sprint it. Like,
he was actually sprinting. Yeah.
I mean, he got, like, usually, like, what happens is they get to the top, Tadej pops off 400 meters ago and just kind of leaves them. But it was like a wheel length. Yeah. It was close. And it was like, ooh, this is exciting.
I'm sure Tadej was thrilled about it. He's like, all right, good.
But then what do we have? Day 2 was sprint stage. Day 3 was breakaway. Then stage 4 was Remco winning the time trial.
Yeah.
And going.
Do you think this is like his kind of warning shot to the just a little bit of that, like, hey, you're going to have to, I'm going to be a little bit more of a force to be reckoned with in the Tour de France.
No, I mean, I saw after stage 1, Tadej said, like, there's a lot that could happen. We still got the time trial.
Right.
Remco's the time trial world champ. He's the Olympic champ. So I think they all know, like, this guy is
he's real good.
Is good, but I think in a race like this, it definitely favors. It helps him in the sense of he doesn't have as many of these crazy mountain stages, which is where he kind of lost time last year. So
because he's up currently on Tadej by I don't know if I'm trying to remember. Tadej is back like 48 seconds from the leader. So I don't know if he's back 48 seconds from Remco or if he's back 48 seconds from the leader. But I think that's a pretty significant time gap where you're thinking, okay, there's only 8 stages of this. So technically this race is halfway over. So at this point, you're right, because it does, like, Remco, it's like Tour de France is like, you've got to get through brutal weeks of climbing, and at the end of the day, it's all about, can you get to that 3rd week and can you still put out power,
right?
And so I don't know, it's really fun to watch so far. I think, to your point, it's really great when you have all these key guys that you're just like, I mean, you got the 3 favorites for the Tour right here that are all giving us a little sneak peek before we head into the big dance.
So Tadej lost pretty good chunk amount of time. So Remco is in the lead. Jonas is in 5th, 16 seconds down. Tadej's in 8th, 38 seconds down, only beating Matteo Jorgensen by 1 second.
Yeah.
So a lot. I mean, still a lot.
Oh yeah,
can happen in the next as they get to the mountains. I think what's been really, this is crazy, is kind of the who knows. Is Tadej. Jonas, I saw an interview where he's like, I'm feeling really good.
Correct.
Remco is like, I'm having the form of my life right now.
Right.
And so Tadej, it's just like,
he's done a lot of these classics so far.
What's he going to be? Like, how's he going to be in the Tour? And like, I mean, I know he's a racer and you put a number on his back and he's going to show up, but it's very, like, I'm nervous, but excited. Like, I'm nervous.
You're nervous for him?
Yes, I'm nervous.
He'll be nervous, Greg. He'll be all right. He's Tadej. Okay, so we would love to hear from you guys. Who is your early Tour de France favorites based on what you've seen so far? Even at this point where this will already have been, the race will already have been over, but whoever wins this, are you Team Remco, Jonas, Pogačar, or are you backing somebody else, a different dark horse going into the Tour de France? We'd love to know going into the Tour. I think that would be fun. So
absolutely. All right, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below on your thoughts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more great content. And until next time, see ya.
See you guys.